Saturday View on Midlands 103. With thanks to Lumclean Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumCleanEnergy.com. Have your say. Call 0818 300 103. Text or WhatsApp your Saturday View to 083 3010 103.
And a very good morning to you all. Ronan Berry here, Saturday View, Midlands 103. What have I got coming up between now and 11? Well, how much are publicans actually making on the price of a pint? Figure is quite shocking. Find out very shortly what that number actually is. Also, if you've ever made a complaint to a public service provider, maybe whose action or a decision they've made has affected you, that complaint can be invested by the Ombudsman. And the Ombudsman's office is 40 years in operation this year. And later in the show, I'll be joined by current Ombudsman Ger Deering to look at the key functions of the Ombudsman and look at some stats from their latest report from 2023, particularly looking at the counties Laois, Offaly and Westmeath as well. So if you're in a position where you have made a complaint against a public service provider and maybe you feel it wasn't dealt with or it didn't get you the answers, the result it wanted, stay tuned a bit later on because you can see how you can elevate that or how maybe that complaint can be investigated by the Ombudsman. And we'll look at some of the key findings and the key decisions and key actions that the Ombudsman has brought about over the past couple of years too. So lots to get involved in. If you want to get involved directly in the show, the quickest way is by text or WhatsApp 083 3010 103, powered by Lamb Brothers Toyota on the Arden Road, Tullamore. Or you can give Nelly a call on 0818 300 103 and we'd be delighted to have you on the show and get your opinion across too. But to start this morning, I'm going to try and take you back a small bit. That something happened a few years ago and it became what we'd call now a viral sensation, but it seemed to just grasp the interest of people all across Ireland, across Europe, right across the world. Now, it originally started in the United States, and in a rather short period of time, millions of people had partaken in a certain challenge. Now, in the past, challenges have emerged online, usually to raise money or raise awareness, and people kind of look at them and they see them, and they're viral or they're trending for maybe a couple of days, and then they kind of disappear and something else replaces it. However, with this particular challenge, people got involved. They went on then, they nominated friends, family, maybe even enemies or frenemies, whatever you want to call them, to partake in it. And the whole thing it was, you did this particular challenge, you donated €2 by a text number, and then the people who you called out went and did the same thing, and they named even more people. And you had to do it, I think it was, within 24 hours, or else you had to pay extra money and stuff like that. But it turned out it raised a staggering amount of money, and not only raised money, but raised awareness of motor neuron disease here in Ireland and right across the world. And I say, originated in the United States, and there's probably a list of people, you know yourself, who actually carried it out. And then the amount of celebrities and maybe minor celebrities, but politicians and huge people of influence from all across the world. Colleen Rooney, Gwyneth Paltrow, David Beckham, Cheryl, Simon Cowell, Taylor Swift, Tom Cruise, George W. Bush, Bill Gates, Daithí O'Shea did it live on the Rose of Tralee. Leo Varadkar was then Minister for Health. He did it, along with some of his Dáil colleagues. Matt Damon famously did it with toilet water to promote access to safe drinking water and sanitation, a charity that he founded too. And I say, it seemed to just take hold and grab. I did it myself. I nominated a few friends as well. But even here closer to home, at Midlands 103, John Blackweir, a former employee here, and Midlands 103 Sinead Hubble partook in it. Here's a little clip of what transpired.
I'd like to nominate some of our colleagues for the Channel Islands.
What the hell?
Oh no, right.
Mike Houston.
And on it goes. I mean, they got an absolute drenching from both down on the ground, but actually people were pouring water from the upstairs office onto them too. So well done to John Blackweir and Sinead Hubble. But what really struck me and surprised me was that was 10 years ago. 2014. It's kind of hard to believe it was that far back. But just recently, some analysis has been done by iReach actually on not only the funds raised, but what the Ice Bucket Challenge did to raise awareness on motor neuron disease in Ireland, and the impact that had in making us all aware of what it was, in raising more funding and in funding additional research as well. So to get a sense of the scale of that impact as well, I'm delighted to be joined at the minute by Kevin Byrne. And Kevin is the CEO of the Irish Motor Neuron Disease Association. Very good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, and thanks very much for having me on this morning to talk about the Ice Bucket Challenge, 10 years.
Very first question, did you partake yourself, Kevin?
I did indeed, and we actually have a video up on our website, imnda.ie, where my challenge 10 years ago was part of that throwback video. So I'd encourage people to go on and have a look. But yeah, I mean, at the time, 10 years ago, it was something that definitely raised my awareness of motor neuron disease. It had a huge impact on letting people know just what the disease does and the impact it has on the individuals and the families.
It was, and it was one of those campaigns that I touched on there, that a lot of these things you would dismiss and say, no, I don't want to partake in that. That's just another kind of foolish thing that's doing the rounds. But this one really, I don't know what it was, it tugged at people's heartstrings. It really, really got great impetus going too. But you've got iReach to conduct some research into that 10 years later. Take us through some of the key points of that and what it means for your own organisation.
Yes, so the iReach survey showed that 48% of the respondents got increased awareness through the Ice Bucket Challenge 10 years ago. It really kind of hit the zeitgeist at the time. It was one of those things that I think it was kind of in the early days of these types of challenges. So it kind of really took on its life of its own and really spread right across the globe from America where it started. But just in Ireland alone, it raised €1.7 million for motor neuron disease, which was used for a variety of different things, including an extra nurse at the time that we could take on to provide services to people suffering from motor neuron disease, as well as 600,000 of that going to specific M&D research through Project Mine, which is led by Professor Orla Hardiman at Trinity College. So it had a huge impact, and the iReach survey has reflected that. It really was something that made a massive impact for motor neuron disease, for us as an organisation, but also to everybody to understand just the impact that the disease has on people.
And it also shows that 94% of people actually can remember the challenge and can remember it on the go, and probably family members and friends participating in it and passing the book on to other people as well. But a significant fund, I think globally, something like $180 to $200 million was raised throughout the campaign as well. So significant funding, particularly when you think that it was quite a simple fundraising mechanism, that you could send a text message that sent €2. So it wasn't like a major campaign that you were looking for large corporate donations as well. And it really goes to kind of gives an emphasis on how many people actually got involved in it. But that it kind of came, I think, as a surprise to a lot of organisations, the traction it gained as well. And it really has helped put things like motor neuron disease front and central. What are the longer implications then in terms of that awareness that obviously filters through to policymakers, people in government?
Absolutely, and it's so important for ourselves that people understand what motor neuron disease is, and the support that the individual and the families of individuals need when they're going through the journey. When they're first diagnosed with motor neuron disease, it has a huge impact on somebody's life. It's such a debilitating disease, often called the 1,000-day disease, because of the outcomes are not great, and it has such an impact. But our role at the IMNDA is, before there's a cure, there's care, and what we want to do is make sure people have the best possible standards of living whilst they have motor neuron disease. And we have a number of services that reflect that. We have nurses right across the country that go to people's homes. We provide grants for counselling and various other things. And yeah, like you say, it's important that the government understand that 85% of our funding comes from fundraising. And really, we do need more support from things like government funds, HSE funds, to make sure that we can continue to give the support to individuals and families, because the need for those is growing all the time.
And specifically those services that you provide, like, as you say, working with people who and it can be a sudden onset. It can be a huge impact on somebody's life, on their mobility very quick. Like, you look at supporting things like specialised equipment loans as well, increasing the number of home visits by MND nurses, and giving people access to those support groups and counselling services too. Again, probably, that it takes a lot of money to raise 85% of that through private fundraising is a big challenge as well. How can people get involved, even on a personal level, but also at a national level, to really help you and grow that number, grow that funding in order to continue providing those services?
Absolutely. So yeah, I'd really encourage people to go to our website, imnda.ie, and have a look. But we have our own campaigns that have really grown over the years. We have Drink Tea for MND, which raised over 150,000 last year. And just in the month of October coming up, we have Walk While You Can, which also raised over €150,000 last year. And that's where we encourage people to walk 5K. Do it with your family, do it with your community, do it with those around you, to raise money and to raise awareness about MND. The Walk While You Can campaign is a really important one for us, and that's coming up. You'd also be aware of the huge influence that Charlie Bird had on our organisation and on the raising awareness for motor neuron disease. Encouraging people to climb mountains in support of the organisation. So that was a huge. But the more awareness we can get, and people can get involved in small ways or in large ways. I definitely encourage people to go to the website and have a look at what opportunities are there for people to get involved, because it's so necessary. We definitely rely on those funds to make sure we can keep providing the really, really necessary services to people with IMD.
Another significant event taking place in October will be the announcement of the budget. Have you made a submission or representation to the government yet from the Irish Motor Neuron Disease Association?
Yeah, we're also always talking to the HSE and to the Department of Health about whether trying to get more funds in to make sure that we can grow these services, that we can continue to provide these services. As you will be aware, everything costs more over the last 5 years. The cost of talking about equipment, the cost of our equipment providing equipment has gone up by 20% or just over the last 12 to 18 months. So, we are consistently, advocating with the government to make sure that we can continue to provide the much needed equipment, much needed services that people need. It's really, really important.
Was there any desire to relaunch the challenge again to celebrate its 10-year anniversary?
It was felt more that to do this throwback video was important, so people could look back and to see what we have our own campaigns that we want to get the same traction. But yeah, it's really important. I think it was more important to revisit it to show the impact that it had, and encourage people to get involved in the campaigns that we have now. I'd really encourage people to go on and have a look at that video. It's really impactful. It really shows just the impact that the Ice Bucket Challenge had, and the impact that the things that we're doing now are having on the motor neuron disease community. The individuals and their families. We provide bereavement support. We also provide a course for carers as well, because the impact it has is on the individual, obviously, but on their families and on their carers as well.
Well, I got a bit of a shock when I saw it was 10 years ago, almost as much of the shock I got back then when the ice hit me. But look, a great cause, worthy, and it's great to know that it has led to additional research, additional resources, that big tranche of funding at the time too, and definitely raised awareness for people right across the country as well. Kevin, continue the great work with the Irish Motor Neuron Disease Association, and we'll chat to you again soon.
Thanks so much, and thank you for your time today.
Well, that's Kevin Byrne there, the CEO of the IMNDA. Time for a very short break. After that, how much money are publicans making on the average pint?
Saturday View on Midlands 103, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
Still to come this morning, I'll be talking to Ger Deering, the Ombudsman, about complaints people can make against public service providers, and particularly how the Ombudsman can investigate those complaints. We'll look at some of the key findings, the key criteria, the key outputs, I should say, from their 2023 report, and look specifically at Laois Offaly, Westmeath, and how many people and how many complaints were actually handled and dealt with. But if you are having an issue and having trouble maybe with making a complaint or getting action taken, maybe it's a route you haven't considered and seen seen the role the Ombudsman can play. That's coming up very, very shortly. But before that, I want to just say a quick shout out to a number of people who I had the pleasure of meeting last Tuesday on a road trip of sorts to Burr. So I want to say in the team in Dooley's Hotel, to Michelle Wynne, Amanda Rice, Ciara McManus, Niamh Spain, Ciara Murdoch and Mary Franks, a massive hello and thank you for your hospitality on Tuesday last week. It was a pleasure to drop in and meet you as part of the Green Ribbon End the Stigma of Mental Health campaign, and with a great bit of crack too. So thank you to everybody there, and hope you're all working hard and get back to work there now. And if there is somebody in the hospitality sector that you want to get recognised and get them some accolades, why not go on to Midlands103.com now, because the nominations are still open for the Midlands 103 Hospitality Awards. Now, they have been pouring in, and so far there are over 8,700 votes cast, but they say there's still time for you to get your nomination in, particularly if you want to find and get somebody recognised for being Wedding Coordinator of the Year. Midlands103.com, loads of categories there. Go on, make your nomination and add to those 8,700 votes that have already been cast on it. But as the ads for the Hospitality Awards say, it is a sector that has been challenged, and in particular in that sector, the pub trade has taken an absolute bashing over the last decade, and certainly since 2020. The number of pubs in Laois, Offaly and Westmeath has dropped by almost 30% since 2005. And the Vintners Federation of Ireland recently stated that 84% of publicans say their family do not want to inherit the pub, and the representative body has declared there's no profit in pubs either, and is now calling for urgent budget supports. But aren't publicans creaming it when it comes to selling pints? We'll tell you exactly what they're making in just a minute, but I'd like to be joined now by Kieran Smith from Smitty's Bar in Mullingar. Kieran is also chair of the Westmeath branch of the Vintners Federation of Ireland. Good morning, Kieran.
Good morning. How are you, Ron? You well?
I'm not too bad at all now, but I suppose I got a bit of a shock the other day when I saw just exactly how much publicans are making on average from selling a pint, and this is based on figures that the Vintners Federation of Ireland have released. Can you tell us the good news or bad news?
Well, I'm in the trade about 30 years myself, and took over my own bar there 10 years ago. And listen, it's been great fun and great crack and meeting loads of people over the years. But like in the last few years, things have just got, ever since COVID, and a lot of issues, I suppose, that have come along. People. When drink driving come in, which is great, we don't want, and obviously drink driving, but certain things like that have kind of, I'd say, hurt the culture of the pub. But just as you were mentioned there about the pint, people come into a pub and it's busy Saturday night and they say, "Jesus, it's great, this fellow's making a fortune" or whatever. But unfortunately, it's great on Saturday night, but it doesn't happen every night.
Yeah. And even at that, if I take you through the VFI published it there recently, so say if a price of the pint was €5.77, €1.08 VAT, €2.06 goes to the drink supplier, including the excise duty, $1.41 approximately on staff wages, about $1.05 on overheads. The government takings in total are €1.77, leaving the likes of yourselves and other publicans with around 17 cent on the pint as actual profit.
Yeah, that'd be accurate figures. Obviously, certain places pay different wages, and some pay better, some pay worse. But those figures on the price of a pint, which is the main factor for the selling in a pub. People come in. It was always renowned that if there's a good pint of Guinness in a pub or a good pint of lager, they'll come in and maybe they might drink something else as well. Bring somebody else in that drinks something else. But our main sale is the pint, which is it's nearly not worth having. It's the figures are a reality, and you mentioned earlier about the pubs in Westmeath have fallen 30% since 2005. That's a huge number, and I would imagine I wouldn't be big into other businesses, but I would imagine it's a huge number as opposed to say groceries, barbers, hairdressers, anything else, any other industry. And since 2019, 11% of pubs have gone in Westmeath, which again is another massive figure. And what we're going to do to combat it is, I don't really know, to be honest. Now we just have to keep on trying. And on family members coming in. I have a son there, he's 20 years of age, he absolutely does not want to go next or near it, and I wouldn't encourage him to get into it, to be honest with you. Not at this stage now.
And that could present another huge challenge too if people do sell up or move out or retire, that it's not passed on, and those number of closures will increase rapidly potentially as well. Now, I know the VFI have put together a submission for the government ahead of the budget too, but for yourself, I mean, Smitty's, bar and stables music venue, it's well known, you put on lots of music, you promote lots of local bands, you're constantly trying to keep things vibrant and all that. How much of a challenge is it though? Because if we see that drink isn't exactly making any profit at this point, how do pubs go about trying to at least make a decent living, keep operationally, keep the business viable?
Yeah, it's kind of a catch-22. Like, we do music there 4 nights a week, and some weeks you look at the figures and you say, "Geez, I'm spending good money to try and make bad money." Like, there's some nights there. There's definitely nothing in it at all. But listen, it's not all doom and gloom. Like, there is great nights, and we can't get away from that either. But I'm in the middle of the town, which is, not so bad. But I can't even imagine what's going on in the country pubs. And just as we were saying there about family taking over from generation after generation, I can't see that continuing. No, certainly not in the country. Like, where my son, not that he doesn't want to, he'd help out if it's needed, but he doesn't really have an interest in coming in and taking it on. So, like, and I'm in the town, so where out the country, my heart goes out to them, really, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you can only just imagine the scale of the challenge, and yet there are those pubs in the country that you pass them some nights, and there's music on, and there's quite a gathering of cars. It probably is sporadic. It's probably only one night a week, and maybe that is enough for them to keep them afloat. But I know some of the key budget demands that the VFI put forward are looking at like a 7.5% reduction in excise duty, kind of to allow publicans reduce prices and maybe increase margins overall. That might help. Lowering the VAT rate for hospitality businesses back to 9%, reduce things like employers' PRSI and delay the move to the living wage to try and reduce labour costs or ease them a little bit, and then maybe reduce the standard rate of VAT from 22% to 21%, again to lower operating costs. I mean, everything in that suggests like it's a sector with massive challenges financially.
Yeah, like the 23% VAT that we're on now at the moment. We don't do food, so we're on the 23%. That was brought in as an emergency when the crisis hit there, back when Brian Lennon and Bertie Ahern and all these boys were around. It was raised from 21 up to 23 as an emergency fund to help out. That's whatever, about 14 or 15 years ago, and it never came back. The banks needed a bit of help, and the whole country helped them. Now they're back up and running, reporting massive profits. The government need to stand up, like, and take a stand, really, to throw. I won't say throw us a bone, but just help out. We're not looking for a whole lot. I'm sure every other business in the country is at the same. Like, your rates, council rates, everything has gone up. Energy costs have gone up. Now they've come down a little, but they haven't come back to where they were. There's just every month, like, you nearly fear the first of the month coming to see what's in the postbox.
Yeah, and I can imagine if that's a smooth month, that there's no kind of additional expenses or a machine breaking down. I remember talking to a cafe owner recently, and a coffee machine broke down, and they were absolutely at desperation stakes because there's probably another 3,000 or 4,000 that month that really wasn't in the kitty, to be spending on a new machine as well. But I know the VFI often say too, like, pubs they're more than just a business. Like, they're community hubs, and they're social centres, and you're supporting local economies too. I mean, at what point is it too late for any government to turn around and say, "Oh, sorry, we missed the boat there, and we've let so many pubs fail"?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'd be in there working during the week, and guys that come in or ladies come in, they come in for a chat. The drink nearly a secondary, like, whether they have 3 or 4 or 2 or 1 pint or have a mineral, whatever. It's the social aspect of public house, which, the country has based itself on for years, and the government have made plenty of, revenue out of us. So, no harm for them to throw a little bit back, as you say, keep us going. We're not crying the poor mouth, but it is crisis time, so realistically, something's going to have to be done.
Well, I think at an average of about 17 cents per pint of kind of profit based on the VFI calculations, I think people might find it hard to argue with you looking for additional support and calling for that before, because you don't want to be one of these things where people say, oh, we let it go too far, now there's no pubs left and everybody else is out as well. There is an opportunity there. Certainly there has to be wiggle room within those numbers as well. But for now, Kieran Smith from Smithies in Mullingar and Chair of the Westmeath Vendors Federation, thank you so much for that this morning.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks a million.
No, thank you for coming on too and sharing that story and talking about the action the VFI is looking for, and led, of course, the current president is John Clendenin from County Offaly, and the owner of Giltrap's bar up in Kinnity. And again, you can see the need, and as Kieran has pointed out, like there is probably a marked difference between your town centre pub versus your really rural pub as well. Maybe some rural pubs have the benefit of being the only pub in a little village. Some maybe are just at those little crossroads as well. And certainly as you drive the country more and more, you see these pubs that were once open that are now closed, and some that were open for well over 100 years shut up. And the chances are they probably will never reopen again. But do we need to keep our pubs? Should we be taking more action? I mean, if you only took the 0.5 billion of that 13.5 billion Apple tax bonanza, that'd probably go a long way towards easing some of the fears for publicans right across the country. And bear in mind, like a lot of pubs, they create employment. They probably have a number of people on the staff. They offer part-time opportunities. They offer people, and this has been said actually recently by one of the major recruitment agencies, that actually they would encourage people to seek out, part-time employment in pub, in hospitality, because it certainly ups your people skills. It gets you used to dealing with members of the public. It gets you thinking on your feet. You become creative in how you get around customer issues or problems. You learn loads about people. You meet different people as well. It can be a really formative part of your career too. So should we keep our pubs open? Yes or no? Let me know. 083 3010 103. And should we take action, real action in the next budget to do that as well? 083 3010 103, text or WhatsApp, or 0818 300 103. Now, after the break, we'll meet the Ombudsman Ger Deering.
Saturday View on Midlands 103, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
The role of the Ombudsman is to investigate complaints from people who feel they have been unfairly treated by certain providers of public services, including government departments, local authorities, the HSE, public hospitals, public-funded third-level education institutions, public and private nursing homes and direct provision accommodation centres. Now, what is an ombudsman? Well, by definition, the word ombudsman is a Swedish word meaning agent or representative of the people, and they examine complaints from members of the public who feel they have been unfairly treated by certain organisations. Well, Ger Deering was appointed Ombudsman for Ireland by President Michael D. Higgins in January 2022, and he's established and led a number of public bodies, and Ger's considerable experience in consumer and employment rights, and I believe is an emo man as well. A very good morning, Ger.
Good morning, Ronan.
Ger, I suppose you and the Ombudsman, I know you've released a report on 2023 with some stats, and we'll look at kind of the number of complaints and stuff raised across Laois, Offaly and Westmeath over the past year or so too. But I suppose just give people a recap, the role of the Ombudsman and I guess how important it is in a democracy.
Yeah, you outlined it very well in your introduction there, Ronan. And as you say, it is an important part of democracy because we hold government to account. And everyone likes to be treated fairly and reasonably and with dignity and respect. So when somebody is applying for something to a public body or needs a service or is just interacting with them, if they're unhappy with how they've been dealt with, if they're unhappy with the result of the application they've made, they should first complain to the public body concerned. But if they still feel that they have not been treated properly, they can come to us. And I particularly mention about being treated with dignity and respect because it's not just about whether you've got the product or the service or the grant that you were looking for. It's also how you treated with, how you dealt with as you were going through that process. And we firstly tried to resolve the complaint informally and amicably and quickly. And indeed, we managed to get about 80% of our complaints resolved like that in about 3 months. But where that doesn't happen then, we carry out an investigation and we can make a recommendation to the public body as regards what we believe would resolve any particular complaint. And just to say as well, we don't just deal with individual complaints. It's very important that we do actually deal with individual complaints and resolve those. But if we see a trend or an issue or something we think is a problem, I can carry out a systemic complaint across a service or across a public body.
And indeed, your 40 years, the office has been in existence now, and even the past year, you've began an awareness campaign to make people more aware of that. Your 2023 report showed actually an increase in the number of complaints that you've investigated too. So clearly that work is having the effect.
Yes, it absolutely is. We're very happy to engage with people like yourself and your own station. And indeed, I've been on the station a couple of times, and we always find that when we do these outreach events with yourself, with radio stations, and also we're working through the public participation networks, the PPNs. Each county has each of your 3 counties would have a network where all of the voluntary bodies and the community groups and all that are part of it, and we're engaging with those because what we want is that people would know where to turn to when they are unhappy, when they've been treated badly, or when they've received a bad service from a public service provider. And as you outlined in your introduction, we deal with a very broad range of, everybody in one way or other, and we all deal with public service almost on a daily basis or certainly on a weekly basis. We all interact. If you take, for example, we deal with complaints against social protection, and we've outlined some case studies there where, for example, somebody who went to social protection when he reached the age of 66 was given the impression that he wasn't actually entitled to a pension, but then discovered at 70 years of age that he was. And social protection said, well, we can only backdate for 6 months. But we got involved and we made the point that the person had gone in good faith and got wrong information. So we managed to get that payment backdated to 66. And I particularly picked that because, as far as I understand, social welfare do something like 80 million transactions in a year. So there will be mistakes and there will be problems. And in any walk of life, it's actually how we deal with a complaint or a problem or an issue when it arises that actually matters.
And if anybody, gets a copy of the 2023 report, and it's available on the website too, but if we look at some of the case studies in that as well, council's withdrawal of emergency accommodation was inappropriate and unreasonable. Man wrongly refused carers allowance for medical report was missed by appeals office as well. Hospital refused to deal with bereaved parents complaint as it was outside the time limit, and outdated referral processes see hospital appointment and cancer diagnosis delayed. You can begin to see, particularly when you spoke at the start about dignity and about making sure that these aren't just dare I say kind of analytical complaints. There's actually they're person centred.
They're quite emotive. Some of the ones you've mentioned there, if you take the 2 hospital ones in particular, you can imagine the situation where bereaved parents, they have a lot to cope with, an awful lot to cope with. And then when they went to go engage with the hospital to be told that you're outside the time limit, that was just unreasonable. And I'm glad to say the hospital did actually engage. The one in St. Vincent's Hospital, that was actually where a person had a transplant. And apparently when you've had a transplant, you are more susceptible or more at risk of cancer. So the person was referred on to another part of the hospital. But unfortunately, it was actually by letter. So the letter got lost in the hospital. We engaged with the hospital. That person at least got their referral, and thankfully, I believe, a good outcome. But we engaged with the hospital then to say this shouldn't happen again. And as an initial offer, the hospital said, well, we're going to get a new printer and, all that. We thought, no, in this day and age, one part of a hospital printing a letter and sending it to another part of a hospital is hardly the most efficient and safest way. So I'm glad to say they engaged and are putting in place a new electronic referral system that should avoid this happening in the future. And as you say, it's not just about money. It's not about those kind of things. There are a whole range of life-changing events tied up in all of these interactions that we deal with.
And thankfully, again, people across Laois, Offaly and Westmeath, we can see from the annual report, overall 4,465 complaints dealt with, an increase in all counties. Now, a modest enough increase, up kind of 1-2% across the 3 counties in terms of the number of complaints made as well. In terms of if somebody does want to make a complaint to your office, it's free to do so. But how did it go about doing that?
Yeah, it is absolutely free to do so. And again, just to remind people to make the complaint to the public body first. And if they're not happy with that answer, or indeed, if they don't get a response or an answer from the public body, then they can come to us. And for many people, probably the easiest way is to go online. Our website is ombudsman.ie, and there's a complaint form on there that they can fill out. But also, we are very conscious that not everybody wants to do things online. And in fact, we use what I tend to call old-fashioned innovation, Ronan, that we actually answer the phone. And I say that because a lot of bodies now, and even in the private sector, a lot of bodies have their phone numbers well hidden and don't want to talk to people. But we understand that sometimes people would want to at least check out first whether they can make a complaint to us, and secondly, maybe they need some assistance to put the complaint together. So they can ring us. It's 01639 5600. That's 639 5600. Or indeed, they can write to us at 6 Earlsford Terrace, Dublin 2. Or if people need to, they can come in and sit down with somebody. That would be by appointment. So we try to make our service as accessible as we possibly can because, after all, we do hold other public bodies to account. So we need to make our own service as accessible as possible, and we aim to do that.
Yeah, it's almost a breath of fresh air to hear that you pick up the phone and actually people can come face to face and visit you. It seems an alien thing because you just need to look up and look at some articles around, say, some big, you call it utility or big corporations. They have trigger words and keywords, and unless you use them, your complaint won't be escalated. It really is an art and a science in itself. But within the report as well, Gerardo, there's also follow-up on previous reports, and this is important too because you're not just making recommendations, you're actually following up to see that action are taken. 2 reports in particular, Wasted Lives from 2021 and Grounded from 2021. Can you take us through maybe an overview of those and the follow-ups that you've looked for?
Wasted Lives was an investigation carried out by my predecessor, Peter Tyndall, and it was in relation to people in nursing homes under 65 who really shouldn't be and don't need to be in nursing homes, where it's not the most appropriate setting. And this is not a reflection on any nursing home. It's a fact. It's the fact that somebody at 30 years of age needs to be in a different setting and with different services. And it was very disappointing to find that there at that stage were about 1,300 people we could see who were in nursing homes who, they might have had an acquired brain injury, or they unfortunately had an accident, or something had happened, which meant when they were leaving hospital they weren't able to go home, or there wasn't accommodation for them, and they were put in nursing homes. Now, we don't have a problem with people transferring to nursing homes on a short-term basis until more suitable accommodation is found for them. So we made recommendations and engaged with the HSE, and I'm happy up to a point with the outcome of that, in that a number of people have transitioned into more suitable accommodation, and that's really important. And we have some really good success stories, and it's fantastic when it happens, but it's too slow. And we are now engaging with the HSE, and in fact, I'm going to engage with government as well in terms of the budget. There's a willingness on the part of the HSE, but I'm now hearing that their budget isn't sufficient for this. And this is false economy in a sense, Ronan, because a person has to be paid for in a nursing home anyway. And this is about actually, using the money in the most suitable way for the person concerned. But what we have seen is the way people are able to live a much more fulfilled life. And we even found a situation, for example, where a person, they had their home, they had the house and they had the home, they were in a position to move, but actually they needed an assessment, an occupational assessment to get a proper wheelchair for it. And because they were in a nursing home, those assessments aren't done in nursing homes. So we had this very bizarre situation where the person had somewhere to move to, but they couldn't move. When they would move, they would get the assessment done, but they couldn't move until they got the assessment done. I'm glad to say those are the kind of situations where we bring common sense, and we got that situation resolved. So that's Wasted Lives. We are engaging very strongly now with the HSE to improve this process and get far more people under 65 who don't need to be in nursing homes out of nursing homes. I'm sorry to say that I can't express the same progress or optimism around Grounded, which is actually about transport for people with disabilities. My predecessors and myself have been pushing strongly, and in fact I described in my 2021 annual report, I described it as a disgrace, the way people with disabilities have been treated in this country in a number of ways, but particularly in relation to the lack of access to transport. For 10 years now, 2 schemes that were there that were investigated by my office, they were closed on the basis that they weren't adequate. And instead of improving them and making them suitable and adequate, they actually were closed and have not been replaced. So really, and I've written to all the political parties actually in the last week to say that, in their manifestos, and not just in their manifestos, but if they're in government, this is an issue that actually needs to be resolved. Could I just mention one other report as
Absolutely,
well, which is the Treatment Abroad scheme. We called the report In Sickness and in Debt. And this was an example of where they're really good schemes. There are really good schemes where if people can't get treatment in this country, either it's not available or it's not going to be done within a reasonable period of time, they can actually travel abroad and have the money refunded. Now, the schemes themselves are very good, but what we actually found was that the HSE was administering them in far too bureaucratic a fashion. And we made 21 recommendations. Bernard Gloucester had just come in as the new CEO of the HSE, and I'm very pleased to say he embraced the report and agreed to implement the recommendations. And I'll give you some examples. So somebody would go to their GP and get a referral to have, say, hip replacement done or a cataract replacement done in another jurisdiction. That could be Northern Ireland, could be England, it could be further afield. They go abroad, they have the treatment done, they pay for it in good faith and arrive back and find that the GP's letter wasn't signed by the GP, it was signed by the receptionist. It was genuine, there was nothing wrong, everybody acted in good faith. In one particular case, I know the GP actually wrote a letter confirming this was my referral, but the HSE said no, it must be signed by the GP and that can't be rectified. Yeah, I'm pleased to say we have actually managed to get all of those cases overturned, but more importantly, it's an example of where the scheme is now operating far, far better for people who want to use the scheme today.
Fantastic. And Bennett, I'm going to have to stop you there because we're just out of time. But actually, a listener's text in, and I won't go through specific things on air, but they've said they've had one issue with a kind of a sporting body that's backed by the taxpayer, and they said they will go and make a complaint to the Ombudsman now. So again, thank you for coming on this morning and taking us through those things and talking really about that, the dignity piece and the human-centric piece as well, and then the follow-up and trying to resolve those complaints and follow through. But for now, Ger Deering, Ombudsman, thank you so much for that this morning.
Thanks, Ron.
And thank you all for your texts as well. A few people have texted in about different issues, say we won't bring them out on air, but I think even what the one Ger mentions there about disability access and public transport, that is one we might follow up on Saturday View, maybe even next Saturday as well. So if you're affected by that, please get in touch with us here at Midlands 103 and we will take that debate on air maybe next Saturday morning. So thank you all for listening. Thanks to all today's contributors and to Nelly for helping in production. I'll talk to you all on Tuesday on Taking Care of Business, live from the ploughing.
Saturday View, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. Lumcloonenergy.com. Midlands 103.